Hey everyone, welcome back to Croc Chat. Today we have another great interview and we will be chatting with Jake Miller. Now, Jake has a successful YouTube channel on crocodilians. He authored a book on crocodilian myths, and he's even working on an exciting research project with the help of long-term croc expert Ron Whitaker. And he's done all this by the age of 23 while attending the Santa Fe Teaching Zoo in Gainesville, Florida. I mean, Jake is showing a lot of promise for what type of crocodilian biologist and conservationist he will be moving forward. So I'm going to put all his information down in the description so you can go check him out for yourself after watching this interview. And let's go ahead. Let's start our chat with Jake. After all, this is Croc Chat. All right, so today we're going to chat with Jake Miller. Jake, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Mark, for inviting me.
So, yeah, well, we have met, first through Croc Fest.
Yeah.
Obviously, you are an avid supporter of Croc Fest. We talk a lot about that on Croc Chat. We got to see each other again at this past one this winter in December, and we've become friends through social media. So why don't you tell everybody watching Croc Chat today a little bit about what your interest or background is with crocodilians and crocodilian biology?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Jake Miller. I run the Gator Jake 456 YouTube channel. I am the author of the book, What We Get Wrong About Crocodilians. I am an alligator trapping agent for the Alachua County alligator trapper, Ron Sanderson. I am also a senior at the Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo, and I'm currently doing research with Ron and Nick Whitaker about claims of crocodilians over 20 feet in length.
Wow. So that's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. I don't know where to go after that. I mean, you said so many things. YouTube, you wrote a book. Mm-hmm. You're still, however, going to school, the Santa Fe Teaching Zoo?
Yep.
Why don't we start there? Tell us a little bit about what's going on at the Santa Fe Teaching Zoo for people who've never heard of it.
Yeah, so the Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo is one of two college-based zoos. So by that, I mean there's an actual zoo on the campus, and the only other teaching zoo in the country that has a zoo on the campus is Moore Park in California. But this is the only AZA-accredited teaching zoo in the country. And it's a 5-semester course, and the whole shtick of it is learning how to be a zookeeper, their husbandry, their diet. So I kind of guess semester by semester basis is your first semester, you're just kind of learning how zoos function, how they operate, and then you kind of work your way up to various animals. So your first 2 semesters, you could be in commissary, which is the food prep side of things. You can be in central, which is working with birds and tortoises mainly, along with our tree kangaroos. And then you work into your senior areas, which is, your primates, your hoofstock, your reptiles, more complicated animals, you could say. And so I'm in my last semester currently, and also tied to the program, you get the opportunity to train animals. So I'm not only one of the alligator trainers, I'm also a trainer for our capuchin monkeys.
That is so cool. So you're working with a variety of species over a variety of classes.
Yes.
Not just reptiles, not just gators.
Yeah, exactly. So, and one of the great things about the teaching zoo with Santa Fe is they make you a very well-rounded keeper. Like you said, various taxa you're working with, and you can almost argue that they're kind of training us to be swing keepers at zoos, being able to take on various tasks and various animals.
Well, for some people that dive into zookeeping, especially when it comes to the general mammal population, they may not even know what got their interest the best until they experience wild animals. So I guess I understand where a teaching zoo would come off with that type of approach, but you obviously have a love for crocodilians that goes deep.
Yes, exactly. Since I was 3 years old, I've known exactly what I wanted to do with my life, and that was to work with crocodilians. There was no hesitation or second thoughts about that.
So, and you were born and raised in Florida?
No, I'm actually from California, so I joke around with people saying I was a Florida man born in the wrong state. And I guess it's my little bit of my background in California as well. So how I got into crocodilians was there was a kid show I used to watch called The Wiggles, and Steve Irwin guest starred on The Wiggles, and I fell in love with that episode so much. I kept rewinding it over and over again. I'm surprised I didn't break my TV remote, but my parents ended up getting me DVDs and VHS tapes of the Crocodile Hunter show. And so watching that show and seeing Steve not only interact with these animals, but speak so highly of them, that there was more to these animals than just, what people thought were mindless killers, that just really intrigued me, and that connected to me at least. And so since I was 3 years old, knowing exactly what I wanted to do with my life, I volunteered at an AZA facility in California when I was in high school. And I actually started writing the book that I wrote my junior year of high school as well.
Wow.
And so, like I said, since I was little, known exactly what I wanted to do. But I moved to Florida in 2022, and I would argue, my career kind of really took off from there. Just, California, definitely I surrounded myself with some reptile people, but I mean, here in Florida, it's if Hollywood is the place for movie stars, Florida is the place for crocodilian people. There's no fact. So I just hit the ground running. I actually met my boss, the alligator trapper I worked for, a week after I moved to Florida. There was an alligator in one of the ponds in my apartment complex that a friend told me about. So I go down there and I'm trying to find it. And, like any crocodilian person does, they go trying to find it. And Ron Sanderson, the trapper, shows up and he's like, who the heck is this guy trying to catch my alligator? So, he very politely asks what I'm doing. And I explain, no, I'm not trying to capture it or anything. I'm just trying to look for it. And I actually just moved to Florida to work with crocodilians. And he was like, all right, you know what? You can help me. So he told me about a trapping agent license you can get. And so I got that, signed some paperwork, and I've been capturing nuisance alligators with him for about 3.5 years now. So, it's been a great opportunity. And Ron as well, he's a great guy. He's been working with alligators for over 40 years. And surprisingly, knock on wood, he's never been bit. So I'm very lucky that I met him and am learning how to work with crocodilians safely through him.
Well, that's cool because, capturing, whether it's to remove a nuisance or work with some form of research for measurements, blood samples, capturing an alligator without getting bitten is a pretty useful skill to have. So, that's awesome. I didn't know you were doing that. But speaking of catching alligators and your passion for crocodilians over the other species at the teaching zoo, you also went to the St. Augustine Alligator Farm's annual Croc School.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so I actually was able to get a scholarship for last year's Croc School, which I am very thankful to the Alligator Farm for giving me that opportunity. I've told several people this, and it's the truth. It was the best week of my life. Just being surrounded by not only just the collection of animals that they have, but the instructors are just amazing people, very well knowledgeable people, and just I could not ask for a better group of people teaching this stuff to me and my classmates. It was a great opportunity, a lot of great and fun people, but I mean, it was, for people who don't know, Croc School is basically a 9-day crash course on the husbandry, the taxonomy, the biology, the conservation, you name it, it is covered in Croc School. So it's very intense. Some days you're at the zoo from 8:30 in the morning to like 9 something at night. So it's a full on, workload, at times with lectures, and then you're doing practical stuff as well. But it is just so rewarding, the stuff that you're getting out of it. And like I said, the group of people that run it, and I mean, just the fact that St. Augustine hosts it as well, which I can't think of another facility that could do Croc School like St. Augustine. But it was just an amazing, well worth experience. And like I said, best week of my life.
So that's pretty much for future researchers and zookeepers who want to get a better handle on working with really large crocodilians.
It's everything. So the main goal of Croc School is, so how it works most of the time is that most people are actually sent by their institutions to learn how to take care of crocodilians, how to improve their husbandry, how to maybe involve themselves in conservation efforts. So like Matt Shirley, he was one of the instructors at Croc School, and he was talking with some of the students about how people can get involved more in the conservation side of things in the wild. But like I said, most zoos are sending their zookeepers to Croc School to kind of better their own understanding of their husbandry for their own animals. For me, even though I am a student at the Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo, I came independently. So that wasn't so much, you know, there was discussions with some of my Santa Fe instructors about sending me to Croc School, but most people, like I said, are coming from an institution. They're not doing the independent pathway that I did.
Cool. Yeah, I've only seen the advertising and read the write-ups. I've never attended myself, but it looks like an amazing, like you said, some of the instructors you get to meet, they're all over, both in the zoo field and in previous research. Working at St. Augustine, or being exposed to St. Augustine the way you are, not only is John Brugan great as the director, but you have also met Kent Vliet.
Yes, and I actually measured some. So Kent, I'd met previously before Croc School, but obviously being a Croc School student, him being one of the instructors, I got to meet and talk with him a bunch. And we actually, last summer, we actually measured some skulls at the alligator farm, including Gomek's head, which was really cool to do. But yeah, Kent's a great guy. He was definitely, you know, one of the top guys at Croc School.
Well, he's one of the top in terms of alligator experts, and this is, of course, your interview. I don't want to turn it on to Kent Vliet, but it just goes to show the age gaps, the age differences. I, of course, saw Steve Irwin, but I was well into my career as a biology teacher, already working with crocodilians in both zoos and private collection. And but yeah, you look at people from the 40s all the way down to your age group, and it's amazing how much of an influence Steve Irwin was to everybody, which is a great thing. For me, in addition to Steve, being able to see him keeping my motivation going, even though I was stuck in New York, was Ken. So back in the 1980s, I don't know if you've ever seen it yet, a National Geographic special called Realm of the Alligator. So Kent Vliet starred in that, and that's when he was doing his PhD work back in the mid 80s. And when I finally got to meet Kent Vliet and talk with him, I told him I show Realm of the Alligator every year since I started my career for my ecology unit, because it does so much more than just the alligators, the ecosystem. And he goes, oh my God, I have not heard that for years. So yeah, I get jealous. I mean, I look at you as a young guy, you're living my dream at a young age, because I feel I've done a lot, but it's been in the northern sector. So, yeah. And then you also added Rom Whitaker's name, another name that goes with old timers like me, because, well, Rom's a little bit older, but when it comes to his work with gharials especially, and over in India, so the skull measurements are connected to Rom Whitaker. Tell that story.
Yeah, so I guess I can start with how I got in contact with Rom. So I got in contact with Rom because, so like I said, my research is involving claims of 20-foot plus crocodilians, kind of looking to see what the maximum sizes could be, what stories or accounts are valid or not. And I was looking into this one account. There was a picture of this crocodile skull with a famous, well-known crocodile hunter, George Craig. And the measurements, so with the photo at the bottom right were these little notes. And the notes included the head length for the animal, which was interesting to me because it appeared like that was a world record breaking measurement. And that photo was taken before a publication came out by Rom and Nick Whitaker about, you know, record breaking crocodile skulls. The study was called Who's Got the Biggest? And I was intrigued because I was like, if this is a record breaking skull, why wasn't it included in the study? So I got in contact with Rom and I was kind of like, hey, did you hear anything about this skull? And so we had some communication back and forth, and I ended up contacting the farm. So the skull, the skull came from an animal called Wujong Senam, and he was a known man-eater in Sarawak. And what was really interesting was not only was he a very large animal, he was measured in at 19 feet 3 inches with some missing tail. he had a white back. So he was very well known and well distinguished between all the other crocodiles. But his head seemed very large. And so I contacted the farm that held the skull, John's Crocodile Farm. And I was like, hey, I think you have a very valuable skull that would be good to get some measurements on. Because what happened was that when Craig measured the skull, his hands went underneath the glass casing, but he wasn't really sure if he got like the tape measure on properly. So he didn't want to include those measurements in that study. So I asked the farm, hey, could you take these measurements? Could you videotape them or take photos of the measurements so we can get this validated? And then sure enough, a couple months later, those measurements got released. The farm took the footage of it, and I sent the footage over to Rom. And then Rom was like, yeah, this is actually the new world record for longest saltwater crocodile head. So that was really interesting. And then Rom and I kept in touch. I actually interviewed him for one of my videos. And so the large crocodilians was actually a subject in my book. Just kind of how I got all into that as well. What happened was, so what we get wrong about crocodilians, it was kind of a deep dive and also a love letter to my early years of learning about these animals. Because when you learn something from the age of 3 years old to where I'm at now, not only do you get a deeper understanding of certain subjects, you also kind of figure out that some things you were taught as a kid or when you're younger, they're a little oversimplified, or it's not quite like what's actually stated, or maybe we don't know certain things. So one of the subjects was claims of 20-foot plus crocodilians. Because there were claims that, oh, this species gets 20 feet, this species gets 23 feet. You got some books that are saying this species gets the 30 feet. And these are well-respected books, so it's not like these authors are just pulling these numbers out of anywhere. I wanted to see where these claims were coming from. So I did a deep dive into that subject, or at least what I thought at the time was a deep dive, and I very much respect what I did. But since that time when I started doing that in 2019, I've amassed so many more reports and much more information since then. And since Ron Whitaker actually measured what is confirmed being the longest saltwater crocodile on record at 20 feet 4 inches, how do you not ask a guy like that for help, or especially his son helping out with that skull paper? So I contacted them and I was like, hey, this is something I've been interested in for a bit. Would you two want to maybe collaborate and do work together? And they both were like, yeah, we'd love to. So very early stages doing that work, but I'm hoping at some point soon we can get together, especially after I graduate from the teaching zoo. We can get more involved and hit the ground running with the study.
That's awesome. I mean, for someone your age still finishing college and then looking at the history of Ron Whitaker, it's just it's a great collaboration. So congratulations on that one. That's definitely something you should be proud of for a long, long time.
Yeah, thank you.
You mentioned your book. So we have that right here. I would not have it available when I'm talking to you. Crocodilians, what we get wrong about crocodilians. So basically, this took you into a deep dive of what was long accepted as supposed facts to what really do we know about them. And I think you hit everything in here, from giant crocs to alligators in New York City sewers. And what was one of the most surprising myths that were long accepted that you found out, not that you knew was wrong, but one that you thought was there for a long time, but really we know much better now?
I would say it's hard. There's a few that come to mind. I would say two are, well, to me, I'll start with the one I think is the most interesting. I think it's the relationship between the Egyptian plover and the Nile crocodile, where it's the belief of, okay, the bird hops into the crocodile's jaws and starts cleaning with teeth and all that. Because, as I say in the book, there's several historical documents and records of this occurring. And it's really interesting because you think that, on one hand, there's so many reports occurring over hundreds of years, there has to be some truth to it. But the thing is that in terms of modern day records, especially when you think of the fact that arguably the Nile crocodile has the most recorded footage of it in the wild. I mean, especially African, taxa in general. Like, so many documentaries are based in Africa, and the Nile crocodile is, arguably one of those species, especially amongst crocodilians, that's most recorded. It just seems weird that with all those decades of footage, there's no actual footage or photos of that relationship. So to me, I found that very interesting. All the footage that's out there is either CGI or it's Photoshop. So in that aspect, I found it very interesting that, like I said, you have this historical report happening through hundreds of years, but there's no actual concrete evidence of that relationship. Now, if you look at photos, there are photos and videos of plovers getting close to crocodiles. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there was maybe a bug or something, near a crocodile, or, maybe on the back or something like that, and the plover's kind of taking its chance. But I don't think, as described, I don't think a plover is actually jumping into a crocodile's jaws and actually picking off leeches or like old bits of food stuck to the teeth. The other one I think that was interesting is the myth of crocodilians being living fossils. That crocodilians have not changed since the age of the dinosaurs. There was no real diversity back then. How that started is that, in the beginning of, paleontology, when it really took off, we didn't really have a ton of fossils of crocodilians or crocodilomorphs in general. And what we did have arguably looked like the animals of today. In fact, a lot of those fossils were put in the same families as modern crocodilians. But the fact of the matter is that as we find more fossils, we see that there actually was a greater diversity of crocodilians and crocodilomorphs. The fact that those very first animals in the Triassic were actually very small land-based animals. I mean, they look nothing like today's crocodilians. And then the fact that you go on and you've got animals with flippers, they have reduced osteoderms or scutes. You've got animals you got one that's literally called pug croc, that looks very much nothing like today's crocodilians. So I think the fact that you had that diversity, I think that just shows that these weren't animals that were just very stagnant. And don't get me wrong, there very much were animals that looked like today's crocodilians during the Mesozoic. But to me, I don't think that's so much of, they haven't changed since the age of dinosaurs. To me, that shows that the crocodilians that we have today, that is the one true and tried method that has survived all the other body plans of crocodilians. That semi-aquatic body plan, that is what stood the test of time compared to everything else that you could consider crocodilian or crocodilomorph has been.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem too, when we start classifying and using certain phrases, people who aren't familiar either with taxonomy, classification in any way, shape, or form. I mean, how often do you hear a squirrel and a rat are in the same family because they're rodents? Well, no, rodent is an order. So we're misusing the concept of, they're not related. Well, technically everything is related through common ancestry. So they use these terms and they throw them around and they use them incorrectly. And so, yeah, you're using a term crocodilomorph, which might be something that the casual observer of a YouTube show like this may have never heard before. Not understanding that it's the earlier forms that were crocodilian-like, but still needed to evolve into our modern crocodilians we see today. So yeah, I think that might be where some of the confusion is. But yeah, from a scientific angle, the diversity is amazing when we look back at their evolution.
No, exactly. The fact that, there was some really cool animals back then that we no longer have. Even some of the crocodilians that are now extinct, past, the KBG mass extinction. The fact that I just talked about recently in one of my videos, Boverasuchus, which literally had hoof-like claws because it had a very land-based lifestyle. It was actually hunting small pygmy horses back in its day. So, like I said, it's unfortunate that we lost those animals, but it is amazing that there were animals like that actually were true crocodilians around.
Yeah, you took a deep dive into the evolution more than I ever have with that coming right off the top of your head. But people still have to realize we do have maybe not as land-based as the old crocodilomorphs or earlier, but Cuban crocodiles running and chasing things on land, and even the dwarf caiman coming out at night and spending a lot more time foraging through the forest and always being that stealthy sit and wait predator at the shoreline for something to come along for a drink.
No, exactly. Those animals, they're very much kind of the last of their kind, you know, when you think about it. You know, they're still largely semi-aquatic, but like you said, I mean, human crocodiles in particular, they have proportionately the longest limbs of all the living crocodilians. And like you said, too, the dwarf caimans and as well as the dwarf crocodiles, yeah, they come out of land at night and they'll hunt little inverts, you know, you name it. And, you know, a lot of the times, too, they're not even living in really large bodies of water. You know, they often live in small streams or ponds.
Right. Yeah. And they flowing rivers and the cooler water.
Yep.
There's just something about, well, dwarf caiman are not my favorite species of crocodilian. We look at Maximo at the alligator farm, a saltwater crocodile, 15 to almost 20 feet long somewhere. That's what people call a dinosaur. But you look at the face and those orange eyes on either of the dwarf caiman species, and I don't know, I just feel I'm looking at a little mini velociraptor.
No, dwarf caiman are very, especially to me, I don't know, they're both cool. I have a little bit of bias more to Cuvier's because there was a local zoo that had them. But I mean, both the dwarf caiman species, they're very prehistoric looking, especially the scoots that the Schneider's has as well, just very pronounced. They're awesome.
Yeah, so I just got a small Schneider's that was confiscated during an arrest. They went to serve an arrest warrant, ended up finding a Moralett's crocodile and a little Schneider's. I got the call just before the last Croc Fest, and then when I got back, they were delivered to my house. So I literally just earlier today, before meeting with you, was finishing up a video on those two new guys joining me. So if you're paying attention out there, folks, watch the other video on the two new Crocs, and you'll see what we're talking about. And the Schneiders, Paleosuchus trigonatus, they have these really spiky scales more so than the Cuvier's. So they really have that primitive look about them.
Yeah. No, they're both awesome animals.
So going forward, what is your goal after you finish school? You're working on this great research project with Ron Whitaker and his son. Where do you see yourself in the future, either with crocodilians or anything in the zoology field?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, I guess to get back to the teaching zoo, so I'm in my very last semester, and you know, we actually have a career day coming up in March where we'll be interviewing with several zoos. Very much open to anything, but I would be lying if I didn't say that St. Augustine was very much, you know, in the books for me. I would very much love the opportunity to work there. Like I said, the people that run it, the collection, the work culture, I very much respect it, and especially being able to see how that facility runs during Croc school. I think it's an amazing place. Beyond, you know, working at a zoo, I'm currently, like I said, working on the study with crocodilians that are over 20 feet. I'm actually trying to write a book on the subject as well. So that's going to be a very detailed, hopefully, what I'm hoping for is that it's a case by case review where I look at every single claim of a crocodilian that was over 20 feet. And I try to, you know, talk about the historical context to it. What's the evidence for it? Do I think it's valid or not, given the evidence? So that's something that I'm currently working on. Expanding the YouTube channel, just kind of keep that running. That's definitely something that I want to do. I mean, the fact that last year I got more views than in 2024 I could not have hoped, I couldn't have dreamed that this channel has taken off like it has. I mean, I just crossed 20.5 million views. I'm approaching 21 million right now in terms of channel views, and I'm very blessed. Like I don't take it for granted at all. It's a weird feeling knowing that I'm able to educate people about crocodilians, and the fact that I'm getting to meet great people like yourself and being able to talk about crocodilians. I can't imagine what 3-year-old me would be feeling right now if he knew that he'd have these opportunities, but I'm sure he'd be jumping off the walls. Beyond that, you know, honestly, just kind of work on projects, alligator trapping, you know, if that's an opportunity, maybe, you know, do that, keep working as an agent. but right now the sky's the limit as far as I see it. So I'm very much open to anything, and I'm looking forward to what the future has.
That's awesome. Yeah, sky is the limit. You're covering all the bases. And I'm glad you brought back up the YouTube channel because we mentioned it quickly. I just wanted to get back to that. So anybody who wants to look over, I'm going to put all your contact info and YouTube channel info in the description, in the comments. But what type of topics are you typically covering in your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so Gator Jake 456, that YouTube channel. So what I normally cover are kind of interesting or very like niche topics about crocodilians. So I guess how the channel started, kind of a little bit of a brief history of it as well. So I started the channel kind of as a way to help advertise my book during my first year of college. And at the time I was just releasing videos that I had of like crocodiles at zoos. So it wasn't really anything special. And then I was like, okay, you know what, I'll start making little mini videos about subjects I wrote in my book. And so I started doing that, and they were getting, a few hundred or like thousands of views. It wasn't anything crazy. And then all of a sudden, one of my videos about a crocodile known as Chris the Savannah King, which was supposedly a 28-foot crocodile in Australia, that video just all of a sudden got 300,000 views. And I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. And then I make another video about a supposed 20-foot crocodile named Gustav that supposedly killed 300 people. That video takes off. And I was like, huh, I wonder if people want to watch videos about giant crocodiles. So sure enough, that's what the people wanted. So that was kind of this topic that I stuck with. And I think part of the reason those videos took off in particular was two things. I think one, kind of like we talked about, people look at a giant crocodile and think that's a dinosaur practically. Mm-hmm. So I think that was an intriguing topic. But then secondly, while there was a bunch of videos about giant crocodiles on YouTube, no one was really doing it in a in-depth or quality way, in my opinion. I think a lot of not saying there weren't videos of high quality on that subject, but I think there were just people kind of just randomly putting together top 10 giant crocodile lists, not really vetting the information, what was actually valid or not. So I think the fact that I brought that quality to it, I think that's what grabbed people's attention and made them keep coming to my channel. But, and while I still do talk about giant crocodilians, I mean, like I said, I'm doing research on it. I've been able to kind of expand my topics into more interesting things. So I came out with a video last year about vagrant crocodiles being seen in Japan and other areas of Southeast Asia that you normally don't see saltwater crocodiles at. I came out with a video talking about how there was kind of these zombie-like alligators that were seen in Florida, and what was actually going on and kind of the ecological issues that were going on with those alligators. It was a really interesting situation. But either way, I'm talking about kind of these various topics that are very not well known or kind of niche, but very much interesting about crocodilians. So it's kind of a little bit of everything, very much still giant crocodile focused, but I try to cover various topics about crocodilians.
Man, that's what I've noticed in many of the episodes that I've had the opportunity to watch, that it's similar to your book in that we hear this on one hand, but here's really what's happening, not just the myths, but the zombie gators or the vagrant crocodiles. The other one that I think is one of your newer ones, and I actually talked to Dr. Mazzotti about this during dinner at Croc Fest, and I plan to get him to talk about it when I talk to him tomorrow night for his interview. But the Nile crocodiles being found in the Everglades, and everybody thinks they are the new thing, and you can't tell one from the American crocodile. But I did note it. You can't please everybody. You can't get caught up in the comments. But I noticed one person getting mad that you used AI, but I'm going to defend you. I'm not trying to hang you out there. But you were using that to show the false information. And then you were correcting that. Here's an AI news report, but here's what's really happening. And I don't think that person understood what you were trying to do with that.
No, I know that comment that you're talking about as well.
I almost commented on it for you.
No, it's not to get into the whole AI topic or whatever, but that specific case was this video that had over 1 million views, and they're talking about how Nile crocodiles not only invaded the Everglades, but they're talking about how they wiped off American crocodile populations in Florida temporarily. And that was just so absurd to me. To be honest, most of those videos I don't really acknowledge. It's like, okay, whatever, you know, I'm not going to debunk every single one of these, but that one in particular was just like, okay, I have to say something, because this isn't just they're trying to make some new spin of the Nile crocodile in Florida claim. They're claiming that Nile crocodiles are killing off our Native American crocodiles, especially because, you know, as I talked about in the video, that we did have a decent decrease in the American crocodile population because of a cold snap that happened in 2009, 2010. And it almost seemed like that video was trying to say that that cold snap wasn't actually what killed them. It was Nile crocodiles. So, you know, that was, like you said, one of those cases where it's like, okay, I have to debunk this and clarify some information. So,
yeah, it's a never-ending battle. And the problem with even YouTube might be a little bit more respected if they watch enough of the videos you put out, I put out, whoever. But Facebook or any social media, it just turns into an argument session. So you just put it out there, let the comments roll, do the best you can.
Like, I had one video that I'm discussing. So there was this one very large crocodile. It's called the Port Blair Giants, and it's just this very, we don't know how long it is because all we have is that one video and there's one photo of it. It's a very big, large, I would argue a little fat as well, but it's just very big. People said it almost looks like an island. It's just sitting in shallow water. But the video came out in 2013, you know, long before AI. But I'll get comments saying, "Oh, that's an AI video" or whatever. It's just, you know, there's reasons to worry about AI that, you know, are correct, but I think there's also a little bit of paranoia as well about, you know, what actually is real, what's not. So that was just one of those cases, at least with me personally, where, well, this is an actual real video, but people are thinking it's AI. So
yeah, totally off topic, getting into AI now, but it does scare me because there are people that watch AI videos and they think they're real, and then there's people watching real videos that think they're AI, and we're going to reach a point where nobody can tell the difference what's real and what's fake, and that part scares me, especially from an educational standpoint.
Yeah.
But this was an awesome conversation. I do want to say thank you so much for joining me. I've been lucky enough to have some of the top biologists current from the past, but I think it's amazing to have one that I see with a lot of promise for the future. So I like highlighting as much as I can. I am going to put you on the spot, though.
Okay.
One last question. You've been to a lot of Croc Fest, and I saw you bidding this last one. I think, did you get the Cayman skull?
I did not get the Cayman skull.
That went for a lot more money than I thought it came in. I didn't pay that much for that gator skull that came from a 9-footer, but I was in for maybe up to 300. I don't think I even got a chance to bid, and once it jumped over that, it went for over 600 or something like that. But I saw you bidding on it, so I know you bid on a lot of things, and you get to come away with a lot of stuff. So, who is your favorite artist that you've seen at Croc Fest?
You know, there's a lot of good people, but I think Mark Perpetua might be my favorite.
But when I say put you on the spot, you didn't need to say that.
No, it's all good. Well, listen, I've got the Cuban Croc one that I got. So I have the concept art. I have that on my nightstand, actually. I've got that hung up there.
Really?
And then I've got the actual framed one that she did for the Crocodile de Cuba up in my bedroom as well. So hopefully, well, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out, because obviously I'll be moving after I graduate, but somewhere down the line, I'm hoping to kind of have my face shown a little bit more on YouTube, and I'll have a, you know, wall of art and all that. And I'll definitely have your Cuban crocodile art on the background as well. So,
well, hopefully there'll be more. So, all right, don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you for one more second after, but I'm going to sign out saying thank you. I know we're going to see each other in the future because I retire in June and then it's down to Florida. and I'll be at a lot more Croc Fest in the future. So that's it for this particular episode. I hope you guys enjoyed meeting Jake and seeing the promise he's providing towards croc conservation and biology for the future. And don't forget to come back to watch for more exciting videos and interviews.